Joining us now, Dane Brugler from The Athletic, their lead NFL draft analyst and author of The Beast. We told you off the top of the show, available now. It's incredible as always, Dane. And we're going to dive right in. So I was actually reading through some of the edge guys yesterday and was reading Donovan Ezeraku's profile. And it sparked a thought in my mind that I wanted to ask you today. Ezeraku's a guy that had to earn it. I think 21st or 22nd in his own draft class at Boston College, not exactly a football powerhouse. And when I think back to the Commanders last year, they took a ton of guys who had similar stories, guys who had to earn it. So as you've done all this biographical work on these guys, who are some of the earn it guys, the guys that you think really stand out as guys that overcame something or found their way, from their high school time to where they are now as draft prospects to really elevate themselves that perhaps a guy like Adam Peters might be interested in?
Yeah, there's definitely a few. And that's my favorite part about doing The Beast, is learning, because there's so many players that are on the doorstep of the NFL, but they all got here in different ways. No two journeys are the same. And so it's fascinating to learn about each one. The one that immediately sticks out is Siobhan Ravel from East Carolina, the corner, who high school, it was injury after injury. He was in a bad car accident, had to have surgery, and then another injury. And he also didn't have the grades. And so he heard from Division I colleges, but didn't have the grades to go. Goes to junior college route, and that was right around COVID. So the seasons are canceled, and next thing, he's working at Amazon at an overnight, working overnight shifts at a fulfillment center. And he just didn't, the dream was still alive, barely. He basically signed up for a camp at East Carolina to go work out, and basically a tryout. He worked 6 p.m. to 4 a.m. shift. And then by 10 p.m. or 10 a.m. the next day, he was at East Carolina for this camp. And he runs a 4.40 40-yard dash. His dad actually sent me the video. His dad was sitting in the stands, and he videoed it and sent me the video. And there's a coach basically tracking him down after he ran to kind of show him the time and say, all right, we need to talk. And so from that, he got the scholarship at East Carolina. And then this past year, had the ACL. And so Alabama wanted him. I mean, there was a lot of money being thrown around about LSU, Texas, Ohio State. A lot of teams wanted him after his great 2023 season. He stays loyal to East Carolina, goes back 2024, has the ACL injury in September, and he's kind of been the forgotten guy in this class. But he was a first-round pick back in September, and now it's like, okay, you're going to get a little bit. He's going to have a discount sticker on him because of that injury. But if anybody's going to overcome that, the adversities he's faced, it's going to be this guy. So, yeah, there's definitely a couple of these names. Jamari Caldwell, the defensive tackle for Oregon. I've heard of, guys being walk-ons, and I've heard of guys coming from the JUCO level. I've never heard of a walk-on JUCO guy, because he had to walk on at a JUCO to get there. And so all these different routes and journeys are fascinating.
That's crazy, because both those guys you mentioned are excellent football players. You know what I mean? So the fact that they were kind of missed in the process is kind of mind blowing. But it speaks again to their passion and love of the game. And so for me, one of the things I love about the Beast is just again, this is how you get all this stuff, man. How do you get you're just calling families, you calling agents. I know you said you talk to scouts. There's so much stuff in here. The thing that gets me is the pro day information. Can you talk about that and how you get it all in this crazy document called The Beast?
Yeah, it's a really exhaustive process to track down.
Probably an understatement, right?
Yeah, the month of March does not happen for me. I have never seen the month of March. And now that I have 4 kids, it does make it difficult when you have dance and softball and baseball and all that kind of stuff. So, but I don't know. With The Beast, my big thing is I want to create something that I would want to read, and if I'm an NFL team, I would want to read this. I would want to be interested in this. And so all this stuff is NFL verified, the testing information. I take a lot of pride that 2,600 players have testing information that I'm getting directly from NFL teams. It helps fill, those data points help with the context of who these guys are. So it's an exhaustive process, tracking down all those from scouts who I'm I wouldn't be able to do my job without kind of my network of scouts who really help me out. And, maybe it could be as easy as a simple conversation where we're bouncing players off each other or just tracking down these numbers. And then it's a lot of talking to players, getting on the phone with them, or make sure at All-Star games, East-West Shrine, Senior Bowl, Combine, making sure I'm getting FaceTime with them to ask them about, hey, when did you start playing football? Hey, what was, tell me about your family life. Who introduced you to football? And then from there, it kind of grows. And, everyone, like I said, has different stories about how they got involved with football. For some, it was love at first sight at 4 years old. For other guys, they were a basketball player all through going into high school. And then sophomore year, they kind of realized, all right, I'm not going to make it to the NBA. Let's give football a shot. And next thing you know, they're on the fast track to a possible NFL career. So yeah, it's a lot of talking to people and the relationships because I've been doing this for almost 2 decades now. And so all the relationships I've been able to cultivate over the years is something that helps me put together this finished product. But it really is a year-round type of thing. It's not like I just get started on this in January. It's starting June 1st, right around Memorial Day, is when I'll really dive into next year and get started for the 2026 class.
So we were just talking before you popped on, Dane, about some of the guys and their stories and how it could affect their draft stock one way or another. Who's a name that you would not be surprised to go a lot higher? I'll be positive and negative here. So not surprised to go a lot higher on draft night because the character is great and teams fall in love with him and you just think that someone's going to take the shot on the person. And then who's someone, whether it's off field, medical, whatever, that there's going to be a bunch of fans screaming on draft night, how in the world did my team pass on this player? And he's going to fall down the board hard.
Yeah, I mean, Mason Taylor, the tight end from LSU, obviously everyone knows his dad, Jason Taylor. I think teams are just very comfortable with him. Obviously, we know the top 2 guys with Colston Loveland and Penn State, Tyler Warren. Yeah. Those guys are going to be top 15 picks. And then could there be a third tight end that gets in there? And I think, Mason Taylor could be, because he's just a very clean type of prospect. I think another guy that's kind of a little bit of a late riser, Femi Oladejo from UCLA, who, I'm sure you guys,
Go Bruins.
Say Mr. Bruin over here.
Right. Exactly. So he played all over. And so is he a true edge rusher? Do we have to play him more of a hybrid role? Teams have been trying to figure him out, but they're really interested because he's straight out of central casting with that body type and the way he looks, the way he can get after the quarterback. So teams are really intrigued with him. And I think, they're going to be more than willing to take a gamble on a guy that was productive. He had 13 and a half tackles for loss last year. But also you think there's more there. We can get more out of him. So yeah, Femi Oladejo is one of those guys. Trey Amos from Ole Miss has been one of those late risers as well, just because he crushed the process and he crushed the season as well. At this time last year, teams were talking about him as maybe a 6th-round pick. He was a backup at Alabama, transfers to Ole Miss, and really played at a high level. Passes defended, the ball production was terrific, and then goes to the Combine, runs a really great time, better than teams expected, really, low 4.4s. And then at the pro day, the positional workout was fantastic. I had a scout tell me it was one of the better cornerback pro days he had seen this cycle. So Trey Amos is one of those guys where if he sneaks into the top 30, I don't think that'd be a surprise at all. And then, a guy that maybe drop a little bit, I think this might be low-hanging fruit, but, James Pierce obviously has been talked about a ton, the character, and, he has first-round talent, but as one scout kind of put it to me, I just want to be convinced that he loves it. I want to be convinced that this is what he wants to do the rest of his life. And, it's okay if you don't love football. There's a lot of guys in the NFL that don't love football, but they take it seriously because they know it's their livelihood and it's a paycheck. And, you wouldn't be able to know by their play that they don't truly love it. But with a guy like this, and you're potentially going to draft him in the first round, you just want to get a good feeling from him that you're going to get the best out of him consistently. And I think scouts have been kind of wishy-washy on whether or not they got the right answers from him.
And interesting, like you said something there that I think I'd like you to just double click on with regards to crushing the process. Because you look at like Mason Taylor, runs a 4.7, athletically, like not maybe, like he's not a Colston Lovely, he's not a Tyler Warren, he's like kind of in a different bucket. Trey Amos, kind of same thing. I think he tested better than people thought. Oladejo, I think, is another great example of a guy who didn't test amazing. But when you say crush the process, can you maybe elaborate on what that means from like an interview type standpoint?
Yeah, and it's obviously there's different steps to the process. There's the All-Stars, the testing, and the combine, and then the pro days and the workouts. And if you go to an All-Star game and you show out there, then you go to the combine and you test well, you interview well, the medicals are clean, and then the pro day you work out well. It's like, okay, you don't just forget the tape. The tape should always be 80%, 85% of the evaluation. But at the same time, there's a reason we have these steps in the last few months. The All-Star game helps, especially with smaller school guys or guys that played against lower competition, to see them go up against better comp. That really helps put into context their skill set. Then the combine, combine's kind of like taking the SATs. Like it's everyone's taking the same test, and it kind of gives you a better idea of who they are as athletes. And then the pro day and the personal workouts. 30 visits as well. The 30 visits, I think people kind of maybe they look at it maybe differently than I do, because if you are a clean prospect and we know everything about you, we're not bringing you in on a 30 visit because we don't need to. But if we have question marks, that's where we're bringing you in. And I've heard a lot of stories in the past where teams have crossed a name off the list based off of how the 30 visit went, because they had questions and they weren't able to answer those questions during the 30 visit. And so teams use 30 visits for different reasons. And, I don't want to paint a broad brush, but it's something that I'm bringing the guys that have question marks to my building about those 30 visits more so than guys that I just really genuinely love.
Makes sense. You mentioned Pierce. I feel like Pierce and then Mike Green are two guys on the edge, and obviously Washington's looking heavy at edge. The character off-field stuff has come up a lot, and thus their range is very wide. We know teams are doing their homework on Green with the two sexual assault allegations, high school, and then one that kind of in a roundabout way causes him to leave University of Virginia. Have you gotten any sense of what teams have found as they have done their homework and where his status is with a lot of teams?
Yeah, and it's tough for those of us on the outside because we can really only go based off of what the facts are. And with Mike Green, yes, two allegations. Talking to some teams, they feel okay with it. They're comfortable with the situation. It's more of it he said, she said, and there was an investigation with both, and no charges were filed. And so it's like, okay, Now you hate that there's two, obviously. It's like, all right, is there a pattern here?
And if you know about those types of issues, like the charges getting filed is actually very rare because of the nature of he said, she said, et cetera.
Right. But I think as teams have dug into the details of each situation, I think they felt better about it as opposed to worse about it. And just talking to teams about it, talking to people around Mike Green about it, it's something that And like talking to his coaches, both at Virginia and Marshall, they both coaching staffs rave about the person, not just the player. We know the player is good, but they also rave about the person. And so I think the character feedback from everybody around him is certainly going to help him. I think ideally this is you don't want to draft a player that has this on his resume. But at the same time, you don't want to pass on a player if it's just not something that is true and not something that you have to worry about in the future. So I think teams are a little bit split, but there have been more teams that have been okay with it as opposed to the opposite.
Interesting.
Is that compared to James Pierce? I mean, because you said James Pierce is a guy like for character concerns is sliding. Like it just, and I think this may be a good illumination of like the investigative process. And then I've had coaches tell me that I'm friends with still in the NFL that basically like if a guy doesn't love ball, like they're undraftable almost. You know what I'm saying? And so how do they compare in terms of the way teams are looking at both those athletes?
Yeah, I mean, I think with Mike Green, it's really just those two incidents, those two allegations. That's kind of what the main thing. With Pierce, exactly. It's more of there's nothing criminal necessarily. It's just
football character.
Yeah, are we going to get the most out of this player? Yeah. We know when he's firing on all cylinders and it looks good, it's okay. We feel good about it, but you talk to some people at Tennessee and not all that feedback is glowing. Like I said, when you talk to Virginia coaches, Marshall coaches, they rave about Mike Green. But when you talk to Tennessee coaches, it's a little bit different. And, you really, that's why when you're a scout, it's like, okay, you have to be part detective, part, journalist, part psychologist. Like you have to really try to understand what makes this guy tick. How is this guy wired? Is it something that maybe he's just immature? Maybe he's just a younger guy and it doesn't, he just doesn't have a good idea of how to represent himself in the right way. And it's something that we can work with and bring him along. Some cases it's just, he is what he is and he doesn't really like football. It's just something to do. It's not something that's ever going to be the driving force in his life. And so it's really hard to draft a guy like that in the first round. And for some teams, he'll be off the board completely. It's not even someone that they would consider if he was available in the 7th round. So yeah, it does make, you think about all of the misses in the NFL draft and how many of those were because of character and because of, and not just getting in trouble off the field, but not everyone's wired to be in an NFL locker room and, do everything it takes to work and do all of that. Like that's where most of the misses and busts come from and why scouting will always be an inexact science.
Last one for you. I know you got about a minute left here. So Shamar Stewart is the guy that I'll use is kind of the question asker here, but guys who have certain levels of production, like his pressure numbers are really good. Sack numbers are not. The athletic testing profiles, excellent, but you're like, okay, but eventually you're an edge rusher. We need you to sack quarterback. And also because college schemes and pro schemes are so different, how do you go about trying to make sense of that? I know now limiting that to like a 90-second answer is probably impossible, but we'll do our best here of how do you try to make those projections knowing that the ask of a guy like Shamar Stewart in the NFL is going to be different than what he was asked to do in college, and you have to try to make all of those numbers in the tape make sense.
Yeah, and Jackson Dart, quarterback at Ole Miss, same type of thing. Yeah. What he did at Ole Miss is wildly different than what he's going to be asked to do in the NFL. So really, position by position, you could pick out a few guys where it's a projection. Armand Membu, one of the best players in this draft, was a right tackle at Missouri. Can he play left tackle? That's something the Patriots are asking themselves. With Stewart, ideally you want that sack number to be higher. I think the fact that his pressures were higher is a good sign because you want a guy that affects the quarterback, affects the pocket. Now, ideally, you want him to get the quarterback on the ground, but if he's affecting the pocket and affecting that backfield action, then he's doing his job. I think with Shamar Stewart, how he was used at A&M, when the amount of times he was asked to pin his ears back and go were just not many. And so the full context of Shamar Stewart really paints a different light than just the 1.5 sacks this year. But he is a tricky player because you love the athletic profile, you love the flashes, but where are you going to feel comfortable drafting a player like this? And for me, my answer will be different than one team, and that team's answer will be different from another team. It's just kind of your appetite for risk. And for me, I'm going to take my chances on high upside pass rushers. And so I would take Shamar Stewart a little bit higher than maybe some other people, but I certainly understand the reservations with him. It's not like he is a super clean prospect that I'm going to stand on the table for. I would just be more willing to bet on that pass rush upside.
No doubt. Dane Brugler, lead NFL draft analyst for The Athletic, author of The Beast, which is available now on The Athletic's website. It's its own microsite. It's not behind a paywall. You just go on there and get your draft information. Get your fix. 17,000 prospects worth that are in there. That's only a slight exaggeration. Dane, appreciate your time, sir, and enjoy the rest of the process here until you and Robert and Derek and Bruce Feldman are sitting there on draft night for your draft show.
Yeah, I can't wait. Thanks, guys.